Hello and welcome back to the Brain First Parenting podcast. On today's episode, I have a guest that I am very excited to introduce you to, Carrie Bonnett, who is not only a dear friend of mine, she is a veteran teacher, a lifelong list maker, and executive function coach based in Bend, Oregon. Carrie works with students and families around the country using a practical, no-shame approach that empowers students to thrive, helps parents and teachers better support them, and give adults tools to stay on top of all that life requires. In addition to coaching, Carrie creates digital resources. She has a signature course called Get the Brain on Board and a series of no-shame guides for parents, and provides brain-based workshops and trainings for parents, for teachers, and for other professionals. She is also an adjunct instructor at the University of Portland, where she supports early career teachers. With that, please enjoy my conversation with Carrie Bonnett. Hi there, and welcome to the Brain First Parenting podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Devine, and I am a therapist, parent coach, and educator who supports parents that are raising children, teens, and young adults with brain-based differences and challenging behavioral symptoms. If you are a parent or caregiver of a child who has intense, confusing, relentless, or sometimes even scary behaviors, you are in the right place, and I am so glad you're here. Let's get started. Hello, Carrie. Thank you for making the time to come on the Brain First Parenting podcast. It's so good to see you.
Hello, Eileen. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you about all things executive function.
Yes, I'm excited too. So my listeners have your formal introduction, so they know a little bit about you in terms of your qualifications and that sort of thing. But I would love for you to just introduce yourself a bit more, anything else you want to add to that, and to include why you do this work. Like, why do you love this work so much? I always think that's fun to hear kind of where folks are coming from in terms of life's passions.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I'm Carrie Bonnett, and I am an executive function coach. I work primarily with students and families, middle school students and up, who are struggling to get their important things done. So I know we'll talk about executive function in more detail in this episode, but that's sort of the gist of it, is that people find their way to me who are feeling frustrated, feeling like things should be easier. In terms of school, in terms of life, in terms of chores. I come to this work from the teacher angle. So I was a classroom teacher for 14 years. I taught middle and high school, mostly humanities type classes. I taught social studies and language arts. I taught some theology in there. I even taught some French in my first 2 years of teaching.
I don't know that about
I did.
you.
Yeah. Eileen and I have known each other a long time, and she didn't know that. When I was a very first baby teacher, they needed a French teacher. So I taught a little bit of French. But I taught middle and high school for a long time. I love this age student. Sometimes people get sort of like scared of middle schoolers. And I loved teaching middle school, and I loved teaching high school. So I come to this from the teacher side. When I was a teacher, I realize now, I didn't have the words to use it then, but I realize now that I was teaching executive function, but I didn't really know what it was called, because the skills that we'll talk about today are strengths for me personally. And so as a teacher, I was helping my students with this stuff, but I didn't have the language to use. Just to give you some perspective, my teacher training, I'm 51 years old. So my teacher training was a really long time ago. And we weren't learning about brains this way. We weren't learning about executive function this way. And I'm pretty sure, I'd love to tell you that, like, when I was a teacher, I really had a heart for the kids who were struggling in this area. But I'm going to be really honest with you. I think I was judging them. I'm sure I was. Relationship has always been really important to me. And in classroom, like, I love creating relationship with students. I think that's super important. They need that. We need that. But I'm pretty sure on the side, I was like, why can't they get their stuff turned in on time?
Yeah.
Why are they having such a hard time sitting still, or whatever the things are? So now that I know better, I can't unsee it now, right? So
Yeah.
I notice about myself as a teacher, like, yeah, that was probably me as with that judgmental frame of mind.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now I can't unsee the executive function lens, if you will, and that's why it's so important. Is that these kids, they need us. They deserve for us to understand as teachers, as parents, that it's a brain thing and not a
Yes.
character flaw. So we'll get into all
Yes.
that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We definitely will. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
But I want to acknowledge, like, just appreciating you sharing just your humanness, because so many of the parents listening and teachers, I mean, there's definitely professionals who listen in as well. I think feeling some shame about that, it's
Yeah.
once they start to see their child or their student or their client differently, it's like, like you said, that's
Yeah.
necessary. You can't unsee it. That is also necessary.
Yeah.
But to give yourself lots of self compassion while you're reflecting on how you thought about things before you had the information you have now, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you for that. Because
Yeah.
there is shame. I mean, right? Like I considered myself a good teacher and an advocate for my students, and yet there I was because I didn't know. I didn't
You
know.
didn't know what you didn't know.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I would love to just begin with, what is executive functioning? What are these skills? What does it encompass? What does it include? So that folks have a really clear and common understanding of that. I think they probably have, some folks have some knowledge about it,
Yeah.
but my experience has been we're often missing some pieces of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
People are starting to hear the term now,
Yeah.
I think, right? Like oh yeah, executive function is a thing that maybe my child is struggling with or whatever. And by the way, I wish we had a different term that we didn't have to use the term executive function. I feel like it's a little off-putting. It feels corporate, I guess. The
Mhm.
executive word there sort of feels corporate, but I wish we had a different term. But what the brain scientists tell us about executive function, the short definition that I use
Mhm.
is that they are skills, they're the brain skills that help us get our important things done.
Mm.
So that it comes, I think the term comes from the word execute, right? Like executing a task. So they are the skills that help us execute tasks. They are things like planning,
Mm.
time awareness, time management, organization, impulse control, emotional control, like being able to
Mm.
say, nope, not now. I'm not going to have this sort of experience or this outbreak or outburst, excuse me, right now. And self monitoring, like checking in with yourself and am I
Mm.
doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing or not? We're talking about focus, staying focused. We're talking about getting started. Gosh, that's one. Task initiation is what you call it
Yes.
in my world. That I would say 99% of my clients would say is one of the biggies. How
Well,
do I get started?
yes, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because that is a big one that, again, when we're thinking about what people usually know about and then what gets missed, I think that's a big one that gets
Yeah.
missed.
Yeah.
And would you say, because I always say the ability to get started, especially on non-preferred
Oh,
activity.
for sure.
Yeah.
When I'm
And so
talking
talk
with
about that. Why? What
yes.
is that?
Well, and same with focus too, to be honest. So when in my first session with my one-on-one clients, we sort of go through all these skills and I say, okay, how good is your brain at these things? And we sort
Yeah.
of say like, my brain is good or my brain is not so good. And the brain language there is really important too. I know in your world, you call yourself brain first parenting, right? So the brain part is super important, not a character flaw, just like how good is your brain at? But yeah, the task initiation, the focus, like staying, how easy is it for your brain to stay focused on the boring stuff is the way I describe it.
Yeah.
When you're tired, when you're distracted. And likewise with task initiation, how easy is it for your child's brain to get started on something they're not excited about? Because I think it may not come as a surprise to you, but a lot of my clients have a diagnosis of some kind, often ADHD, autism, other things like that. And in particular, like getting started on something boring is really, really
Yeah.
hard for brains that have those diagnoses or others. And I think, honestly, I don't know why it gets missed. Well, let me give you a story, one example. I do some teacher trainings too and workshops for teachers, which I love because I think executive function is the missing link in schools, really, because I didn't understand it, right? So a lot of teachers
Right.
don't.
Right.
But at the end of one of my presentations, this veteran teacher raised his hand and said, "So, are you telling me that when I give the class a class period or the week to work on the thing, whatever the project is or whatever. So, and someone sort of sits there and just doesn't get started, doesn't do the work, talks to her friends, farts around, like just whatever.
Yep.
Are you telling me that that's an executive function challenge? And I was like, yeah, I think absolutely it is. That's why it gets missed sometimes, is that it seems willful, right? Like
That's
that
what I was
student is
thinking.
just, they
That's
don't
right.
want to do it. But
That's right. How is that behavior being interpreted? Usually through a behavioral lens.
totally, right. Like
Absolutely.
they're choosing not to work on the thing or whatever. And same
Yeah.
with chores at home or
Yeah.
homework
Yeah.
or
I have parents, I have them think about, well, let's think about things we don't like to do, things that are
Mhm.
boring or overwhelming, or
Yes,
it's just like, oh, I just can't even think about getting started on it because it just feels so big or
so
so
big.
hard.
Mhm.
And most of us, if we identify as neurotypical, I say, well, we eventually can get over that. Like
Mhm.
we can get over that hump, that inertia,
Right.
whatever it is, and get started. It happens to all of us, right? It's just a different frequency and intensity.
Yes. Intensity. Yes. 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 And feeling too. I mean, I don't know if your parents will say, but like it's an emotional thing too, right? Like it
Mhm.
feels gross to sit there
Yeah.
in front of a task that you don't want to do, but maybe you have to. So there's like the emotional component too of like, ugh, this
Mhm.
doesn't feel good.
Yeah. So you just hit on something else. We're already going off the questions
Okay,
that
great.
we're bound to do that.
I knew it. I knew it.
But this piece about a task that you don't want to do, but maybe you have to. And I think that's the other piece. I'd love for you to talk about how you kind of, I don't know, straddle the line or balance when you're talking with parents about, yeah, your child does have difficulty with a skill. And I understand there's things that need to be done. So
Yeah.
that they are clear, it's not an excuse like, oh,
Yeah.
well, then they just don't ever have to do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
They
I'm
all
glad you mentioned
communicate
that.
that
I'm
balance.
really glad you mentioned that because yes, it's hard as a parent. I'm a mom too. I have a currently 15 and a 12-year-old. But yeah, as a parent, the expectations are okay, right? Like to have some expectations of your child. And that's where sort of like the strategizing comes in. I like to call it strategy shopping
Mhm.
because it's not, like one strategy or one tool to help your child get started is not going
Mhm.
to work for every brain. But yet there are definitely like chores, for instance. There's lots of research that shows that chores actually are really helpful for kids to feel like part of the family, to
Yep.
feel like successful, competent, right? And they're not always fun. Like my
Right.
personal I don't know why I hate it, but I don't love unloading the dishwasher.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite chore, right? And we still have to unload the dishwasher at our house because we're lucky enough to have a dishwasher. So I guess I think, yeah, sometimes, and I hear this from teachers too about like, but aren't we excusing the student from the expectation that we have if we look at it through this lens? And I would argue no. I would argue that we can still have high expectations of our kids while helping with some scaffolding, some tools, some strategies, some support to help them get through these hard, sort of frustrating, annoying. I use the word
Yeah.
annoying a lot in my practice, like with the kids, like what's most annoying about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think both are possible.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So we've already started talking about your work with students, obviously, but also with the parents. I'm curious how you balance your work with both. Um, my understanding is that you require parents to be involved, maybe completely or to a
Yeah.
degree. I'm curious about how you kind of
Yeah.
work with both, I guess, and what does that actually look like?
When I was first getting started in my coaching practice, a woman that I learned from, she required parents, if a child lives at home, so if middle school, high school,
Mhm.
even if a college student is still living at home, she required at least one of the parents to be kind of in on all the sessions. And so when I first started, I took that on as like, oh, okay, well, that's her recommendation. Great, I'll do that too. But what I've come to realize is that that's a really important piece is because when students make their way to me, they're struggling, right? Like they need some support. Great. But they're not usually ready to go it alone. So like if a seventh grader or something and I were to meet one-on-one, it's hard for that seventh grader to then like practice the thing that we talk about
Mhm.
on their own without additional support. So part of the reason why I still require a parent to be in on our sessions, and by the way, not just like a fly on the wall,
Yeah.
but answering the questions, like I was just saying about like, how good is your brain at these skills? That's something I I ask the parents the same thing. Like, how good is your brain at task initiation? How good is your
Mm-hmm.
brain at organization? So part of it is because when the student leaves our session, I want them to be able to have the support at home in between sessions from their parent. Another part of it is that parents tell me that they learn things too to help support their brain in executive function, right? Often, you know this, and parents listening know this, often, not always, but often a child who has challenges in this area has at least one parent who
Yes.
also has challenges in this area. And so I find that it's like a double whammy. Like I can help support the family. Yeah, we're kind of there for the student, but
Yeah.
like help support the family to understand brains better, and understand what strategies can help and the language to use, because that's
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
thing, right? Like that brain language that I was just saying, like that's, as a parent, it's sometimes hard. We use blame and words like lazy and stuff like
Yeah.
that, negative stuff,
Right.
because like we don't know better, right? Like we were just
That's
talking
right.
about.
It's that behavioral lens that we all are entrenched in because we
Yep,
live in this society. And so what I hear you saying is that even having them there, it may benefit them, but it definitely benefits helping them shift their language and shift
absolutely.
the lens that they're using to see
Right.
their child through. I would be curious. I hear from a lot of parents whose kids are what I would describe as very shut down.
Mm,
And um, that usually has come about because they've had what I describe as this chronic poor fit in their
yeah.
environment
Yeah.
between the way that their brain works differently, not having sufficient accommodations. A lot of times, these are the kids where their brain based differences are more invisible,
Yeah.
except for those behavioral symptoms or, the things like not turning in work, looking like they don't care, what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And so they become discouraged. They hate school. They have low self esteem. Maybe school refusal has set in, or the parents really worried about that. I can imagine those parents reaching out to someone like you.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering how you begin your work
Yeah.
with a student who appears to be resistant
Hmm.
and is very shut down in that way. Like, what does that look like?
I have a couple thoughts that come to mind. One is very slowly, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, right? Like nothing happens fast in this brain world. You know this. Another thing that I will say is that I often don't see those students because it's important in our work that I do that the student is ready for help. And
Mm,
so
mhm.
those types of students, while they are out there, and I do hear from the parents, I often don't meet with the students because until they're ready for support and help, it's just not worth it, right? Like
Yeah.
I mean, it's worth it to help support the student, but to have them sit in a session with me when they're like, I mean, maybe they do care, but I don't care about this. I don't want to get any help. I don't need the help. So, I mean, yes, there are lots of students out there who have this. I've heard this term, like a wounded learner in my
Mhm,
world, like that shutdown that you're talking about, that like
mhm.
they just have not had their needs met.
Yes.
And like you said, it's a mismatch for them in their school, their environment. So even that being said, that I don't personally meet with students who are experiencing that. For parents, what I would say is just tiny, 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 tiny baby steps. And sometimes it's okay to take a step back from requiring things or asking about school or even the chores to protect your relationship.
Yes. Yes.
It is not worth it to blow up your relationship with your child over homework or
Yeah.
chores or screen time. Or I think the relationship piece is so critical. You know this in your work and your
Yeah.
social work. And the relationship piece is the most important thing. So connecting with your kid, maybe that's the first baby step
Yeah.
is to just have a little fun together.
Because without relationship and connection, there's very little progress that can be made.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, as we talk through it more, I think of those kids as being buried underneath these deep levels of protection, whatever that looks
Totally.
like for them. And what it sounds like is there are things that need to happen first to peel back a
Yeah.
few of those layers so they can be vulnerable enough to get help. And so maybe it is about the parent then getting support.
Yeah. 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 I
Is what
do,
I
I
always
do
talk
parent
about.
coaching too, right? Like just working with the parents can be really
Yes.
powerful. You know this. It's
Yeah.
really powerful. Even if the kid is not on board yet and not interested in like, I know how to do this. I don't need any help or whatever. That just working with the parents on a few little tweaks in their routines or in their family life can be powerful. So, but I think that, that relationship piece is so important, which is what we all want, right? Like we want to have a relationship with our kids when they're 30. At least I
Right.
do.
Right. Right. Yeah. And acknowledging that I was just talking with a parent who has a high schooler who's no longer attending school.
Yeah.
And every single interaction they have is about
School.
when are you going to go back to school? And it's rooted in her deep, deep concern
Mhm.
and fear for him. But we talked about just that thing. What would it be like to give that conversation a rest? And she's like, I don't know.
I know because we're so worried. We want such
Right.
wonderful, important things for our kids.
Right. But what I wanted that parent to hear and what I want them to hear in this conversation, because this is what you're highlighting for me, is that there are things that they can do, getting the right support, having information about executive functioning themselves so they can shift their lens and start to bring expectations more in alignment, really,
Yeah.
with who their
Yeah.
child is, that can help that really shut down student come out of that protective mode so that then they are in a place where they can actually receive the help that you offer.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
a little more receptive to like trying something.
Yeah.
Because part of my work, part of it is education, right? Like brain
Mhm.
educate. I keep a brain on my desk. I don't know if this is going to be really on YouTube or not, but anyway, I'm holding a model of a brain. But part of it is like brain education
Yeah.
about your brain, your student's brain, like understanding myself better, and then part of it is the strategy shopping, like the practical stuff. But with a student who is shut down and doesn't want any of this information, you can't do the strategy stuff because it doesn't matter. It's not important in this moment.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel for that mom who's like, I don't know how to stop talking about this thing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That fear is real for
Yeah.
sure. So, what about students who are in a very different place where um, they are doing okay in
Mm.
school? They're doing well enough that maybe they don't even have a formal like IEP in place, but
Yeah.
the parent can see things getting tricky.
Yep.
And
They're flying under the radar, but yeah. Uh-huh.
they're flying under the radar, but maybe not for long.
Yes. 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 Yes.
um, And we could throw in, even if they have like a 504 IEP, I think the same feedback might apply. You can tell me if that's true or not. But what advice would you have for those parents who are trying so hard to advocate for supports, accommodations for their kids related to executive function in those academic settings?
That's where people often find me is because something in the academic setting is not going well, usually.
Mhm.
I think, gosh, the advocacy piece is hard. I'm going to just say that first of all, hard for the parent to
Yeah.
advocate for their student, but also students work with me on self-advocacy too, and that's really hard
Mhm.
too, right? Because it takes executive function to advocate for yourself for the
Yes.
executive function challenges. It takes noticing, and likewise parents takes noticing like what works, what doesn't, what are some situations that are especially tricky. So just want to make a note that that's hard. Like the advocacy piece is hard. As a teacher myself, I would have liked to hear from parents. And I know some parents are reluctant to reach out to teachers. They're so busy. They have so many students. They
Yeah.
fill in the blank. But I would have liked to hear, these are a few things that work at home, or these are a few things that I've noticed about my student. The thing you mentioned about like they're doing okay, but you're just waiting kind of on bated breath for like
Yeah.
what's gonna happen next.
Mhm.
I think it's okay for parents to reach out to teachers, and I as a teacher would have appreciated that communication, because
Mhm.
here's the thing, your kids best. Like,
Yeah.
as a teacher, like I was saying, relationship was really important to me. I've tried to get to know my students. I really valued that. And I didn't know them the way that their
Yeah.
parents know them. So, making observations at home and even like jotting things down, like making note of what happens when, like
Right.
at 3 p.m. when they come home from school, their brain is toast and they need whatever, like just being curious. I know you talk about this in your work too, like
Yeah.
getting curious about these lagging skills. I know you use that term too. And being able to articulate, making note of it at home in a low pressure environment is a lot easier than like in a parent teacher conference trying to like come up
No.
with the
Yes.
things, right? So
Yeah.
having some data to share with teachers. And I don't know, do you have that experience that parents are reluctant to reach out to schools?
Yeah, because they maybe they secretly hope that things will change somehow.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And they maybe their student, their child is saying, "Don't you dare reach
Yeah.
out!" Like they're
Yeah.
embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, they just think, well, maybe they're hopeful that
Yes.
maybe the full-on
Maybe
advocate.
they don't trust themselves, like their gut that says something's about to explode or, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think the other piece is sometimes what they get feedback on first is the behaviors.
absolutely.
And um and so they feel some shame about that, or
Mhm.
like, my kid's that kid. I never imagined I'd be here. And that keeps them from feeling full confidence in reaching
Mhm.
out and advocating. But I could
Yeah.
see, when we talk about seeing the patterns, writing down what works at home, and if a parent's like, I don't know what the patterns are.
Yeah.
Nothing works at home.
Yes.
But that's where
Yes.
you come in.
Yes. I have lots of ideas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that you could then help them understand the lagging skills
Right.
and be able to more effectively advocate in that school environment, especially with your background.
Yeah. Right. I have a lot of classroom experience. So
Mm.
it's been a little while, but that was before COVID times. So
Yeah, yeah,
there's that too. But I just think, I mean, some of the more basic things that I talk with parents about is, my favorite catchphrase, is that a thing? I don't know, I call it make the invisible visible. So
yeah,
I know in your work you talk about, visual schedules or visual checklists or visual whatever, like
yeah,
so much in a student's life is invisible, even in the classroom. Right. In fact, the last time I was in the classroom, I was doing a long-term sub for 3 months in
yeah,
a high school social studies classroom. And I had been a teacher for a long time and yet forgot that, gosh, writing the agenda on the board is actually really helpful for brains, for students to see what the day is going to be like. But for the first couple weeks of that like long-term sub gig that I had, I didn't do that. And
yeah,
then I was like, oh yeah, that's really helpful actually, is to have like, here's what we're going to do today. So then I changed gears and in the classroom, I made that invisible stuff more visible by just writing the thing on the board. And this is parents can take this tip and go with it because there's so many things that are invisible. Time, I mean, gosh, time is invisible. Chores
right.
are invisible. How to clean your room is invisible. What I look
Yes,
like when I walk out the door with my backpack and my iPad and my jacket, invisible.
yeah,
Unless we make it visible for students.
right,
So
right.
even that little tiny thing is something you could try out at your house and then report back to the teacher and say, you know what? I've noticed in the last few weeks that really making stuff more visible is super helpful for
Yeah,
my kiddo.
yeah. Yep, yep, making the obvious concrete.
I love that. Is that how you say it? I love it.
Yeah, it's one way that I say it. So again, that's like a neurotypical brain. We get
Yeah.
all the unspoken context and cues,
Yes.
and that's not always
Yes.
happening. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
love
get
that.
that. All right.
What else do we need to talk about?
What do we need to talk about? Is there anything
Things.
else that you want to make sure my listeners hear? And then I definitely want you to share where they can find out more about the work you do and the support you provide and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I'm sure they hear this from you, but you're not alone, right? There
Yeah.
are a lot of parents in your position who are feeling overwhelmed, who are feeling like, I don't know what helps. I feel like I've tried everything.
Yeah.
And I have these like tension when I get an email from the school or a call from the school. Like, you are not alone. I know it feels like you're alone sometimes, but you are definitely not alone. And when we know better, we do better, right? Like I was talking about
Right.
at the beginning about myself judging my students when I was a teacher. I don't do that anymore. So I definitely know that you I feel like your people know this, but that you will, when you know better, you do better. So, others are just two little things. And then, my website is where you can find out all kinds of information about me. It's just my name, carriebonnett.com. There's resources there, free resources there. There's one actually I really love called the Task Initiation Toolkit. And in fact, you can find that at carriebonnett.com/toolkit. But that's just like 16 ideas for ways to get started on something that your student or you, let's be honest, really don't want to do, right? So just ideas for like, how do I get started? I love that one. But and then that's where you can find out information about coaching, and I have a blog and a YouTube and an Instagram, blah blah blah. But thanks for having
all the things.
all the things. Yeah,
Great. We will link to your website and also that toolkit link in the show notes so people
awesome.
can find that really easily. And if there's any parents out there who have found this conversation resonates with them, reach out to Carrie. She's a gem.
Thanks, Eileen. We didn't mention that we have known each other a really long time.
Yeah, 20 plus years.
20 plus years. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on. It was great to see you as always.
Oh, thanks for having me, Eileen.
Okay, take care.
Before we say goodbye, I want to be sure that you are aware of all the free resources I've created with you and parents like you in mind. You can access them all in one place at go.eileendivine.com/free resources.